Mm.
Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday on a Thursday to our Bayou Blitz family. Thank you for joining us on a football night, even though it's only the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me is my partner in crime and a little less broken than the older of the two co-hosts, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy Wednesday on a Thursday.
Yeah. And my apologies to the people who are popping in a little bit late. If you guys were with us last week, I said my MacBook has a mind of its own and put me in a different time zone. I didn't realize it till after I created the show today. It did it again. So we were scheduled to go on at 11 o'clock at night, Bob. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? We're 2 hours early on the East Coast. But nonetheless, thanks for tuning in, guys. I'm good. I'm home. I think I had a little bit of a better reaction than a lot of people did over the weekend. Some of you guys hung out with me on the PSF app, and we talked through some of that, and we will again tonight. But we do have a special guest joining us here shortly. It's going to be JC Allen. You guys may know him from Twitter at JC Allen NFL. He covers the Bucs for Sports Illustrated. He's going to be popping on with us to break down a team. I'd say one of the more surprising teams, if not the most surprising team in the NFL, starting 3-0, a team that was projected to finish dead last in the NFC South. So we're going to break down, for those of you who haven't watched film or aren't familiar with how this team is 3-0, we're going to talk about that and give you a little bit of inside scoop from the other side of the trenches. But before we get into that, Bob, let's talk about it just a little bit. Let's tease it a little bit. Derek Carr's injury. It's a sprain.
Yeah.
Drew Brees came out and talked about how he dealt with a similar injury, didn't practice all week, and then just came out and played on Sunday. I think the initial prognosis is a lot better than a lot of people had thought. I certainly, for one, figured we'd be seeing Jameis Winston for at least 4 weeks. We may not see Jameis Winston at all. So real quick, just your thoughts before JC joins us, your thoughts, how you felt when the injury first happened, and your thoughts as the week has progressed.
When the hit first happened, my heart stopped. I thought the way Carr went down, the way Carr was taken down, it looked like a potential season-ending injury, to me. And I have dealt with shoulder injuries, several times through my volleyball career, and a couple serious ones. And I will say this about an AC joint sprain. I know the word sprain to the average person or the layman, it almost makes it sound like it's a not serious injury. Oh yeah, just shoot it up, go out there and play. Folks, this is to his throwing shoulder. And I will tell you firsthand, when it comes to an AC joint injury of any kind, regardless of the severity, your power is affected. In Carr's case, the velocity of his throws, the angles. That you can move your arm at, let alone snap a football or any other ball, in a throwing motion. So when people, and I'm sure a lot of people will allude to the fact that, some of the semi-professional medical reports have come out and said, oh, it depends on how high Carr's threshold of pain is. And that's the case with just about any injury. But when your threshold of pain has to do with how you make your living, your livelihood being throwing the football, your threshold of pain, will automatically cause you to alter throws, even if you can take the pain. That's a fact, of dealing with a physical injury. Again, especially one to a quarterback's throwing shoulder. And I know, neither Dennis Allen nor Derek Carr have ruled him out of this Sunday's game. To me, it's all but a given. The Carr is going to sit at least 1 week. If nothing else, then precaution, because again, an AC joint sprain, that tells you that the area around a very important area of your shoulder is injured and at risk of more serious injury. Translation, more serious injury, Derek Carr's out for the season. You retain Jameis Winston for this reason. To take over as a short-term quarterback, because you believe that he has the physical abilities and the veteran leadership to guide your team, or at least make your team competitive. This is when you use him. This is exactly why you kept him around. So I still expect Derek Carr to be out probably a couple of weeks. If the Saints lose to Tampa Bay this weekend, that does increase the likelihood that you might want to try to rush Carr back, because you've just lost your second game in a row, second game in a row to a conference opponent, and you've just lost to a divisional opponent. So at that point, any injured player, not just your quarterback, you're going to want to. I don't want to say rush back into playing time, but increasing the urgency a little bit. If the Saints win, on the other hand, then you go, then you circle back to the drawing board and you start the same process all over next week. Derek, how you feeling on Tuesday? Derek, how you feeling on Wednesday? And you kind of take it literally day by day. But I for one would be absolutely shocked to see him play on Sunday.
Yeah, here's the thing with that. First off, you're absolutely right in the thinking of you brought Jameis back for a reason, right? There was a plan to go after Derek Carr from the get-go, and if it wasn't Derek Carr, it was going to be another quarterback on that market. So you knew all that, even with bringing Jameis back. You and I have called Jameis the best backup in the NFL. Jameis has called himself one of the best 32 quarterbacks. Derek Carr almost reiterated that this week in saying Jameis Winston's a starter in this league.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the reason you brought him back, is to prove that he can be. And it's also a chance for Jameis to prove to 31 other teams, hey, I can still be a starter in this league. And don't you think too, this is going to have nothing to do with the decision on whether Derek plays or Jameis plays. But don't you think Jameis is going to have a little bit more juice to go up against the team that drafted him, the team that gave up on him? I mean, you go back to, not everybody wants to go back to the 2020 playoff game, but for this example, we will. 2020 playoff game. Wasn't it awesome to see Jameis Winston throw a touchdown pass against his old team?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't that great? That season as well, you have the 38 to 3 in Tampa Bay, and you have Jameis eating a W over Drew Brees' shoulder in the post-game interview. Like, Jameis definitely has something when it comes to Tampa Bay. And so, you certainly don't hope or wish injuries upon anybody, but in a situation like this, I'm excited if Jameis can go, if Jameis is going to be your guy, because I think, how do I want to put this? A desperate man, or a man playing for his career, that's a whole different animal. When you got a guy playing for his livelihood, and in one way or another, you have to look at it that way for Jameis. Jameis is playing for his livelihood. He's either going to be a career backup from here on out, or he's going to be a fringe starter. And he's fighting to be that fringe starter for some team somewhere. And he's going to have a little bit extra in the bag because it is Tampa Bay. It is the team that drafted him. It is the team that gave up on him. So I'm excited for that aspect. When it comes to Derek's injury, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, this isn't good. I saw the hit. I saw he was a little slow to get up. And, of course, you're like, he's a little banged up. He's going to brush it off. But when he stayed down, it was, oh, man, this is bad. And then the fact he didn't come back into the game, oh, this is bad. Our very own John Hendricks reporting he's being evaluated at a local hospital hours after the game. Oh, this is bad. So I think it is pretty fortunate that it is an AC sprain. Sprains are tough. I don't want to reiterate everything Bob just said. I don't want to repeat it. I don't want you guys to feel like we're making you study for a test on sprains. But anybody who's had a high ankle sprain or a severe ankle sprain knows that it is almost worse spraining it than it is just breaking it.
Mm.
And sprains can be that way. Like I said earlier, Drew Brees talked about his experience with an AC sprain. That's not the same experience for everybody. Derek is feeling better per reports this week.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'd be surprised to see him go this week. I'd be surprised to see him go next week. And I'm a little against what Bob said, regardless of whether the Saints win or not. Yeah, there might be a little bit more urgency to get him back on the field, but I don't see a reason why he doesn't get 2 weeks off. Just to make sure you're good. Because even if the Saints lose to Tampa, if they come back and they win in New England, you're still in a good shot for this division. Because let's face it, like Tampa has surprised a lot of people. And I don't think it's going to I don't think it's going to be this thing where we're talking about the Bucs being like a 10-7 or 11-6 football team at the end of the year. I think at some point, you get off to a hot start, but it tails off. And this is a team that once they get figured out a little bit, and Baker Mayfield, I mean, just look at the resume. And I was a bigger Baker guy than a lot of people. But he throws interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't happened yet. But it will. Jameis is on the same thing. I'm not just discriminating against certain players, but like Jameis is the same guy. You get enough pressure in Jameis's face, he's going to make bad decisions. And that's just kind of woven into the history of both those guys who were both top quarterback draft picks and both have great potential in the league still. But I just don't see Tampa being a team where it's like, oh, Baker Mayfield has an MVP type season and the defense plays really well. And Mike Evans is still Mike Evans, especially because Mike Evans wanted out just a few weeks ago, but reportedly. But yeah, I think the Saints are still in good shape. I don't think there's going to be a need to rush him back. If you lose both, yeah, there's a little bit of concern. If the offense still looks as pitiful as it has in the red zone, it's a different story. And I guess we'll dive into some of that. We'll dive into this while we still are waiting for JC to join us. Let's talk about the red zone issues. And does that change with Jameis Winston? I think if he does indeed play. Obviously, you go back to week 3, the Saints do score in the red zone with a Jimmy Graham touchdown. If you guys joined us on the pregame show on PSF, I called it. So
you did.
Welcome. But at the same time, was I going to say Jimmy Graham touchdown every week until it actually happened? Probably. I probably was. But now 3 weeks in the season, I don't have to worry about it anymore. It's done. But I digress. Jameis, in his time as a starter, showed that he had really good relationships in the red zone, particularly with Juwan Johnson. Maybe not in the red zone, but he certainly had some games with Michael Thomas, where I think there's some positives there moving forward. And we're going to halt that conversation as our guest, JC Allen, has joined. So we'll go ahead and bring him in, and we'll talk about the most surprising team in football. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers starting the year 3-0. Again, for you guys that don't get a chance to watch Tampa Bay very often, and you're sitting back going, Bob, Brendan, what's going on with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Who better to give you that insight than JC Allen? Again, he is with Bucs Gameday of Sports Illustrated. JC, thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out with us this evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's always a fun week, Bucs Saints week. There's always the chirping has started from Tyrann and Cam. The Bucs aren't going to say anything, but then they're going to be explosive in game, and you got to make sure Evans doesn't lose his cool and go after Lattimore and Carlton Davis, who might not play, but Michael Thomas back for the first time in a couple of years, really kind of back to being himself. That's always a fun matchup to look out for. So it's a fun week. It's Bucs Saints, while it's not a rivalry. If you ask Cam Jordan, there's definitely no love lost between these two franchises.
Yeah, JC, and I want to echo what Brendan said and appreciate you joining us. Yeah, I know what Cam said. Cam's a notorious gaslighter, though. Everybody knows that. If you watch these two teams for the last, I don't know, like 5 years, 4 years, you watch their games on the field, and they are as intense and physical as any matchup between any team in the NFL. And that, everybody knows about Lattimore and Evans. That's pay-per-view worthy in and of itself. But even on the other side of the ball, Cam and those, Cam Granderson and those Tampa Bay offensive linemen, guys like that. Now you have a fiery personality like Baker Mayfield, who's a nice little trash talker in and of itself. I do expect this game to be extremely physical on Sunday.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think these two teams get up for each other. They definitely, it seems like the Saints are one of those teams that kind of play to their competition. It doesn't matter if the Bucs are doing well, the Bucs are doing bad. They always get up for them no matter what. You kind of look at the last couple of weeks, and the Saints not so effective moving the ball, not so effective scoring, but playing to the level of competition they played. But the Bucs team, they're going to be up. It's going to be heated. There's going to be plenty of trash talk on the field. Probably a bunch of flags thrown, especially with Sean Hockley out there calling the game. My goodness, just trying to outdo his dad in the worst as he can. But it's going to be a fun physical matchup for sure. Low scoring too, I think, and we'll get into that, I'm sure, down the line. But I'm excited for Sunday's game. As always, when these two teams play each other.
Well, I'll put it like this: I was telling our viewers before you got on, and even when we opened the show, hey, this is a Bucs team that might be the most surprising team in football, especially when you look at their record. For people that don't get to see the Bucs week in and week out, if you could just summarize it very shortly, how are the Bucs 3-0? What are some things that Saints fans might not recognize about this football team? And what could the Saints expect on Sunday, at least offensively, with a new quarterback in Baker Mayfield?
I'm a little long-winded, so I don't do anything really shortly. And I hate to correct you, but the Bucs are 2-1. They dropped the last game to the Eagles, but still, if you look at where the national media had pegged this Buccaneers team, they were in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. Right down there with the Chicago Bears, with the Texans, well, not the Texans, but like bad record wise with the Texans, with the Cardinals and those teams who are projected to not do so well this year. That was never going to be the case. There was too much talent on this team. You look at it across the board on offense: Tristan Wirfs, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. On defense, Levante David, Devin White, Vita Vea, Antoine Winfield Jr., Shaq Bear. Too much talent for this team to only get 2 or 3 wins. And when you looked at everyone picking who was going to be the division winners, it was mostly the Saints because of Derek Carr, who has a grand total of 0 playoff wins in his entire career. Not a guy who's kind of, oozes that, okay, yeah, he's a franchise saver, right? They sure as heck paid him like he is, but not a guy who is going to come around and really save your franchise. And for the first 3 weeks, that's kind of been the case. Bad mistakes in the red zone. The offensive line hasn't allowed him to really get anything going. But I digress on his problems. And back to the Buccaneers, I think a lot of people overlook Baker Mayfield because of what's happened in his career. Again, this is a guy who's had 7 head coaches and 6 offensive coordinators 5 years, and everyone's like, well, he's played for 3 teams in 1 year. Well, a lot of that has to do with certain semantics and stuff like that. Remember, Baker had his best season in 2020 under Kevin Stefanski in a system that is derivative of what the Bucs are running now with Dave Canales. They were literally probably a Chad Henne 4th and 13 scramble stop on defense away from going to the AFC Championship. Yeah. And maybe Baker's getting that second deal, and they're not even looking at Deshaun Watson. So it's one of those things where it's kind of, you get Deshaun Watson, who before all this happened, when healthy, was probably a top 7 to 5 to 7 quarterback in the league at the time. He was lights out. So you make that move for him. Now Baker's kind of, waffling in the wind. And I think the move to Carolina never really fit him ever. I think that's more of an ownership. They got new owners in the last couple of years. Like, let's make a splash, bring in Baker. Didn't work out. Matt Rule's back in college for a reason, because he's not an NFL coach. He goes over to Sean McVay, has some success, but their offensive line's decimated. Cooper Kupp's on IR, and guess what? Allen Robinson is no one knows who that guy is anymore. So it never really worked out for him. And as I said, in this system, this offense that Dave Canales brought over, it's very friendly to everybody on the team, on the offense. It's friendly to the offensive line. A lot of mid-zone, wide zone, horizontal blocking schemes instead of vertical drop back set passes and stuff like that, where you're tiring the defensive linemen out by moving them left and right the whole game instead of just having them, pin their ears back and come back, which was a part of the problem that plagued the Bucs last year with Brady back there, and they couldn't get the run established. And, he's dropping back 60 times a game because Brady's, I'm going to take over this game. And at that point, teams know what you're doing on first down, know what you're doing on second and third. And with Dave Canales' offense, it disguises things, so you don't know what's going on. It's one of the reasons why they have one of the best third down conversion rates, in the league, especially going into week 3 before didn't work out so well. But I think that offense works well with the players, skill position players as well. And I think that's the reason why, if you were following the Buccaneers and not just the newspaper clippings and, the blurbs online and stuff, that you knew this Bucs team was going to be pretty good. And so far on offense, they've looked the part. On defense, besides, just a poor showing last week against the defending NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. Got to remember that's who they lost against. They looked really good in week 1 and week 2. So, got back to that identity of stopping the run before last week. Weren't really letting up explosive plays before last week. The goal was to get back to that level that they were playing in week 1 and week 2 against the Saints, and then continue that throughout the season. If they can do that, I think you're absolutely right. This could be last year's Seattle Seahawks. Kind of weird because offensive coordinator was with the Seahawks last year. But this could be a team that really surprises people and really makes a push for the division. And again, can win potentially, 10 games this year. Told you it wasn't going to be short.
Oh no, it was very spot on, according to what I've watched from the Buccaneers in all 3 of their games so far. So that's appreciated. JC, I've written so far this week about the Buccaneers basically having all new faces along the offensive line. If they're not new faces, then they're guys playing in new positions. Wirfs is a great example of that. Has been a right tackle, every year of his career so far. Now on the left side, and he's the type of player he's going to excel anywhere he's put. But other than that, I mean, your Bucs. They rank dead last right now in average per carry at 2.8. But I happen to like Rachaad White as a running back. Do you see their struggles on the ground being a product of White not necessarily being a prototype number 1 back, or is this offensive line still getting its cohesion down?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of Rachaad White. The offensive line is not getting enough push in the run game. The pass blocking has been really good. I don't really have many complaints rewatching the tape about the pass blocking. Yeah, there's some things they could, do a little bit better, but you're not going to win every rep. This is the NFL, and you're certainly not going to win every rep against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who are just ridiculously stacked in that front 7, especially with the depth they have to get after the passer. The first 2 games, they didn't let up a sack. The only sack that really came in that week 1 matchup was more Baker than anything. He kind of just, panicked and the pocket collapsed, and it was tremendous second effort by Danielle Hunter. So, they were really good. I think when you look at what's going on, Coach Bowles kind of said, there's some holes to run through on Monday night, but it's a little bit, like I said, it's a little bit on Rachaad White not being able to, kind of not take what's there, but utilize and say, okay, be decisive in some of the runs, feeling where those voids are going to be, seeing that stuff before it's there and being able to hit the hole and not being hesitant. I think it's about more with him. It's more decisive, a little less, movement, and just, see hole, hit hole, run hole, go. And to that point too, for White, it's been a little bit, okay, it's been give and take. It's like see hole, hit hole, go when it's not there, and if you just hesitated for a second, this hole would have opened up and you would have had a 6-yard gain instead of a 3-yard gain. So it's just been, I think it's been his ability to read the push in the offensive line, not getting enough of it, and sustaining blocks as well. Those two things have really led to a poor start in the run game. They had a little bit of a showing in week 2, but they really got to get back to that because, like you said, I think they're second. I think it's 2.7, and I think it's like 31st in the league in yards per carry. That's not going to cut it.
Bouncing off that, needing to be a little bit better in the run game, and going back to what you were talking about with this offense, being almost a picture perfect image of what Baker Mayfield had in 2020. A lot of people, when they associate Baker Mayfield and his time in the NFL, along with bouncing around, has been, well, a lot of balls that he's thrown have just bounced into the hands of the opposing football team, right? But you look at that 2020 season and you go, only 8 interceptions, had a really good year with Cleveland. Cleveland ran the ball decently that year, not great in 2020. But if the Bucs are unable to really find anything in the run game, do you still foresee this being a Baker Mayfield season where he doesn't throw 13, 14, 15 plus interceptions and is more of a game manager like he was in 2020 than a guy that you're going to go, Baker, we need you to win the football game?
Yeah, I think he can win the football game if you need him to. I think he's shown that. But I think at the same time, that's what this offense calls for. It doesn't call for a superhero. You don't need to be Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers out there. You just need to be a point guard to distribute. Dave Canales, his offensive philosophy, and it sums it up so perfectly is hit him with the body blows, hit him with that body, that quick out, hit him with that over the middle, crosser, hit him with this, hit him with the check down, hit him with the check down. Okay. Hit him with a run for 3 yards, hit him with another check down, hit him with a, 5 and out, the dig route. And then boom, here comes a haymaker. You weren't expecting that because we've been pumping you full of body blows and it's a big score, or it's a big gain. And I think if he can do that consistently, he'll be able to cut down the turnovers. You look at that; he was in the same system. Again, it's not the same exact system. Mike Shanahan is a godfather of it, right? And then he passed it down to Kyle, and Kyle and Sean developed it together. And now Sean's got all these disciples throughout the league with Kevin O'Connell and Steven Stefanski, and there's so many of them out there now. But it's all generally the basis of it is the same, and you're just utilizing different things that you've learned along the way. And one of the things with Dave Canales is he's had so many guys to learn from. Pete Carroll, offensive, genius, Brian Schottenheimer, Darrell Bevel. These guys are all really fantastic offensive minds. And he's been able to take that Shanahan offense style system and kind of put it together for what he wants. And what he wants to do with it. And I think that's really put this offense in a good position. He said it today too. Bucs fans haunted by the first down runs last week. They had 9 of them. Only one of them went from 10 or more yards. The other 8 ended up for just 19 yards. 2 of them went for a loss, including a safety. The other one went for no gain. No, the rest of them went for 9 yards. I'm sorry, 8 for 9 yards. 2 of them for for a loss and a safety. 1 for no gain. They're having flashbacks of last year when they're just consistently running on first down. But, it's something Dave Canales said today is like, I'm going to be stubborn with it. We need that run game to go. Like it's like, obviously I'm not, he's not going to do something that's going to be detrimental to the team, but they can't just say, okay, run game's not working, we're done. Let's just pass it all game, because that's not complimentary football. That's not what they're looking for. It doesn't extend drives. It doesn't lead to, time of possession, and it puts you in disadvantageous positions. And I think that's where Baker comes in, right? And that's where, okay, if it's not that, if you don't get 2 yards on first down, right? it's okay to take that check down on second down. It's okay to take that 4-yard pass to the running back, or that quick screen to the wide receiver that's going to get you 4 yards. And now you're in third and manageable. You're in 3rd and 4, and that opens up the playbook a little bit more, where in other systems and in other years, Baker was like, oh crap, I'm in 2nd and 8. Let's go for 13 yards on this throw, or, so I think that's part of the offense is going to help him. His interception was kind of fluky. It just started downpouring. And he had Mike, he was just a little late on it. It's one of those things where it wasn't like an egregious, like that was a terrible throw. What were you thinking? Like we've seen Tom make those. We've seen Aaron make those. The best of the best have made those kind of mistakes. So I don't look at that turnover and be like, wow, here we go. I look at it as, okay, take this, learn from this, and move on from this. And I think they'll do that. Now, again, they're going to be some really good, defensive backs and secondaries throughout the league. And it starts with, Lattimore this week, Alontae Taylor this week, Tyrann Mathieu, although he's going to be playing a little bit more in coverage than being that guy, because Marcus May doesn't know how to use the NFL's, car service.
Right.
And, but there's still going to be some dangers there. Demario Davis can still make plays on the ball as well. So he's going to have to be smart with it. And so far through the first, 3 weeks, only 1 turnover. Was the last quarter team to have a turnover in the league on the offensive side of the ball. And, I think they'll do well this year.
JC, switching to the defensive side of the ball for Tampa Bay. To me, this still looks like a very, very talented defensive unit. I mean, they got playmakers on all 3 levels. But I look at Shaq Barrett. I look at Joe Tryon, who's finally living up to the billing of a number 1 pick. Looks every bit like one. Over the last couple of weeks, in fact, every snap this season, the Saints have had all kinds of issues with edge rushers. Do you see that being an area where Tampa Bay focuses on, bringing pressure on who we think is going to be Jameis Winston, or whoever the Saints quarterback is going to be?
Yeah, they're gonna bring pressure, but I don't think they're gonna jump right. They know Jameis. They know they can start rattling Jameis. Jameis is gonna make some decisions, some bad decisions. But at the same time, the way the Saints offensive line has played has been really surprising. Cesar Ruiz missed his starting center, missed his second straight practice, dealing with that concussion. Big name to monitor tomorrow on the injury report to see if he's going to play. And Ryan Ramczyk just has not looked like the guy he was before. He was probably the best right tackle in football until Tristan Wirfs.
JC, that's not Ryan Ramczyk. Someone stole Ryan Ramczyk and replaced him with a pod, I'm convinced.
Right. I mean, he was the best right tackle in football until Tristan Wirfs came around. And then, you would expect him to jump right back with Tristan Wirfs, but he's just not looked aim. Andres Pete has been a disappointment. Eric, McCoy hasn't been great since he moved over to guard. And then you look at Penning is still learning as he goes. I mean, he's got flashes. He's got a mean streak, but he can be taken advantage of, and he can, he's still a guy like Shaq Barrett is going to know how to set him up throughout the game to take advantage of him. So I don't necessarily think they need to really bring the pressure Bulls will typically bring. I do think they will at points to really kind of rattle him. This is the guy who will drop Vita Vea at a linebacker position in coverage and put Levante David as a nose tackle just to freak guys out, But, Winston has seen a lot of this stuff too. It's, can the Saints offensive line stop it? And I don't know if they're going to be able to on a consistent basis. It's funny because if you looked at these 2 offensive lines before the season, I would have said I have more faith in the Saints offensive line than I do the Bucs offensive line, especially in pass pro. And it's been quite the other way around. The Bucs pass pro has been really good, especially in the bookend tackles. Luke Gedeke has been one of the top-rated tackles the last 2 weeks, whereas the Saints have been really shaky. So they're going to pressure Jameis. It's probably going to be Jameis. You're not going to risk David Carr right now. Throwing shoulder, a team that can get after him. The Saints have allowed 12 sacks on the season already in just 3 games. You don't want to put him out there where Bowles is going to, potentially further injure that shoulder. Put Jameis out there. But I think they're going to get after him regularly. And I don't know if they're going to necessarily. Depends on Vita's playing. Vita's missed the second straight practice with the pectoral injury as well.
I was going to ask you about that, about him and Carlton Davis, whether they're tracking to play on Sunday.
Vita, I don't know. It could be one of these things where just like they had a walkthrough on Wednesday, so that's kind of a wash practice. Today was a did not participate. Tomorrow will be the real factor for a lot of these guys because they're coming off a short week. But if Vita practices tomorrow, he'll be good to go on game day. Kalijah Cansey's not going to play. Servacio Dennis is not going to play. Jamel Dean's likely not playing. If Vita can go, I expect them to do a lot of pressure with just 4, rotate a lot of guys on the defensive line, try to keep his snaps a little, lower than normal and protect him a little bit because you got the bye week where he can rest up. But if not, Carlton Davis is a big iffy. He was a full participation in practice today, but he's been dealing with a turf toe. He suffered in week 1. Usually those take even mild 3 weeks, to kind of heal up from. With a bye week right there, and you have an extra 2 weeks, this gives them 5 weeks to heal before the Lions game. I think it's one of these situations where do you play him, if he's 70%, or do you sit him? He wants to play. Michael Thomas is back in that lineup. He wants to play to prove that he can shut down Michael Thomas. His slant boy, as he calls him. But it's one of those things where if it was me, I wouldn't. I think the risk is greater than the reward of playing him. I said earlier in the week I don't expect either cornerbacks to play. I would still be kind of shocked if they both play. I think he'll be called a game time decision. We'll really see tomorrow. They brought in a couple cornerbacks, William Jackson and Tay Hayes, for workouts. If they sign one of these guys, tomorrow morning, they're out there. I don't think either of them plays, because they're kind of banged up at corner. Even their backups are dealing with, nicks and bruises. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think Carlton's a game time decision. We won't really know till game time. But if it was me, I wouldn't play him.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the health of those cornerbacks because it works right into my next question. Is the New Orleans Saints, though the offensive line hasn't been that good, you look at the individual numbers for Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, and they pop off the page a little bit at you. So if you're the Tampa Bay Bucs and you have to guard those 3 plus Juwan Johnson at tight end, who has been relatively quiet this year, Jimmy Graham, who at least in the red zone, is going to be a threat. And you get Alvin Kamara for the first time this year. The New Orleans Saints do. He's coming back from his suspension. What kind of concern levels do you have that you have that many injuries to the secondary?
Yeah, obviously that was the biggest concern coming in, right? I think when you look at this Bucs team, the one spot you couldn't have injuries was at cornerback or safety. You don't have a lot of depth there. Luckily, they have more depth at cornerback than they do at safety, albeit that's not even a lot either. Second year cornerback Zion McCollum has played pretty well the last 2 weeks. He's had some plays that he's given up, AJ Brown, but I mean, it's AJ Brown. Again, you're not going to win every rep. And he's looked pretty good. He's got the speed, the size. I think if Davis can't go, you'll probably see him matched up more on Olave just because of the speed, and you'll probably see D. Delaney matched up on Thomas. They don't typically they're more of a zone team. They're not a match and play team, but you can't have D. Delaney matched up on Chris Olave with his speed. You just can't. You have to have someone with speed out there. And with Dean not playing, I think it's going to be Zion McCollum. Even if Carlton Davis does play, it's still going to be Zion McCollum matched up on him. And that's going to be an interesting watch. I expect plenty of help over the top. I'm not too concerned about the tight ends. I think Levante David has been known as a tight end eraser. Took away Jason, he took away Travis Kelce. In the Super Bowl until the second half when they're just like, whatever, beat us with Kelce, you're not going to beat us with anybody else. And they couldn't do it, and they were down far enough. And he's just done it throughout his career. Devin White's been much better in coverage this year with his instincts and ability. He had an interception last week. Would have been a pick 6 if he wasn't dealing with a groin injury. Had to run out of bounds because he was just feeling some discomfort. But he probably would have had a pick six. Maybe that game's a different story, different outcome. It's certainly a lot closer than it was, would have been. But I think, as far as Kamara, you guys covered him and watched him for the last couple of years. While the numbers were still there, he's not the same guy he was a couple of years ago. He's definitely lost a step. He's not in football shape, that's for sure. Sure, he's fresh, but it's week 3. A lot of these guys, are fresh. They're not super banged up. I mean, if this was like week 12 and he was coming off and, feeling fresh as an egg, then maybe you're a little worried. Jameis, they haven't utilized him as much as they have in the passing game as they have the last couple of years. He went from over 80 receptions out of the backfield to dropping down to like 54, high 40s. It's one of those things where will they be able to utilize him? Will Jameis be able to find him quick enough? They've got weapons to respect. I'm not saying the Bucs and the Bucs fans shouldn't be weary of the Saints team. It's just, and again, it's kind of like last week we were talking about the Eagles team, like they haven't played their best football, and the Saints certainly haven't played their best football either. But one of those teams is the NFC champion of the league, and the other one missed the playoffs. Was the 3rd seed and only had 7 wins. So I think it's one of those things where you certainly can't overlook this Saints team because they have the talent, but at the same time, that talent hasn't played up to par. And if the Bucs can execute their assignments well, I think this is a game that they should win. It's going to be close. It's going to be physical. It's going to be low scoring, but it's a game they can certainly go on the road and win. I think playing in Minnesota week 1 and being able to in a new offense with the skull chants and everything like that and how loud it was is going to be beneficial for them. Playing in the Superdome where we know it's like the Thunderdome now. You can't hear anything. So I think that helps them too. But especially with their assignments on defense and everything like that, and on offense. So, it's going to be a fun matchup. Certainly have the weapons to exploit the Bucs if they want to. So the Saints haven't been able to do that all year, and now they're trying to do it with a backup quarterback as well.
JC, obviously you're Mike Evans guy. We're Marshawn Lattimore guys. But even as a Tampa Bay guy, it's hard to really overlook the numbers or the lack of numbers that Mike Evans has put up against the New Orleans Saints defense. Yeah. Do you see now that Dave Canales is in as the offensive coordinator and the offensive philosophy has shifted a little bit? Can you see Evans being more effective against Lattimore and that New Orleans secondary, or is it still going to be a lot of mano a mano and whoever's the better man on that particular play on that particular day is going to come out with a better statistical showing?
Yeah, we'll definitely see some mano a mano there, but for the most part, it's not going to be like that all game. Don't expect this is a completely different offense. It's not that archaic offense that they were running last year. And that was the biggest thing, right? It worked well in 2020. It worked well in 2021 when you had Antonio Brown and Godwin and Evans and Gronk and Brady and Fournette and all the names go on and on. A stellar offensive line, before Marpet retired and all this and Jensen go. Before you had all that, it worked because you could literally line up and say, okay, our guys are going to beat you. If he's not beating you, he's beating you. If he's not beating you, he's beating you. We are a matchup nightmare for you. Good luck. Go against us. Last year, they tried the same thing. Results weren't as good because you can't rely on that to just win, and me and Byron went back and forth in press conferences all year long. What are you doing to scheme things up? Well, your EPA says you should be doing this, laughing at me, calling fantasy football questions. EPA, what's that? Laughing at me and stuff like that, but going back and forth. He didn't scheme guys up. He just set his guys out there without that talent, with Chris Godwin coming back from a torn ACL. With Mike Evans, with a rookie tight end, and with the leftover remains of Kyle Rudolph, with that overweight, out of shape, and bigger than life personality, of Leonard Fournette, Tom Brady going through a divorce and just kind of not looking the same. and said, okay, we're going to run our offense. You go beat him, you go beat him, you go beat him. And if it doesn't work, then we're not going to make any adjustments. We're not going to scheme any guys open, and none of that's going to happen. This year is completely different. Mike Evans has got a lot of passes out of the slot. Chris Godwin has moved more outside from the slot. They're going to move these guys all around. Marshawn Lattimore is likely not going to follow Mike Evans into the slot when he moves there. It'll be interesting to see if he follows him on the other side of the field when they do bunch looks. But he's going to get his opportunity to go against other guys in that secondary other than just Marshawn Lattimore. It's not going to be best on best like it has been in the past. And I think that's where Mike can really get dangerous, especially if he gets one of these mismatches, with the slot, or even I think Alontae Taylor is probably a mismatch in its own right as well. I think Lattimore right now is probably one of the top cornerbacks in the league that can really take away what Evans does, and he's done it consistently on a basis, so he can do it. But they'll definitely see plenty of each other, but he's going to see plenty of time all over the field as well. And that's something he's seen, and even in the offseason, it's like, wow, I haven't been this open in a long time, because he's not just relying. It's hard to double team guys out of the slot, and it's he's also been moved around so much instead of just saying, okay, you play outside on the right and run, or you play outside on the left and run, and that's not what he's being asked to do. And you can see, the hot start he's already out to this season.
Well, first, I want to say thanks for hanging out with us as long as you have so far this evening. But my final question to you, and this is one that I like to throw out there, especially because we have so many viewers that, don't cover or watch, Tampa Bay football, is if you had to pick an X factor on both sides of the football, like the guy that's going to make the difference for Tampa Bay to go into the Superdome and walk away with a victory, who is it offensively and defensively for Tampa?
It's easy to take the quarterback, right? So I won't do that. I won't take Baker, but I think obviously it starts and begins with him. He's touching the ball on every snap. I think the X factor in offense is going to be Chris Godwin. He hasn't been involved as much as the game plan has dictated. I mean, their first read is Evans, second read is Godwin. That's just how it is. But I think Evans, with the matchup he's drawing, I think Godwin's going to get a lot of opportunity. He usually does really well against the Saints, too. So I think Godwin's the X factor. You got to get him incorporated. You got to get off to a fast start. And I think utilizing Godwin is one way that you can do that. And on defense, I think Antoine Winfield Jr. Is going to be huge in this game. His ability to play the back end of the field, which is going to come in handy, especially with if the cornerbacks are out. His ability to play close to the line. He's got 10 sacks in his career already. Just kind of fly all over the place and be that safety valve in the back and back deep, and also covering tight ends underneath, making that last line of defense. He would be my X factor on defense. I think both of those guys need to have big games in order for them to come out victorious against the Saints this week and go 3-1 into the bye.
JC, thank you so much. I know you stuck around a little bit longer with your busy schedule, but we really do appreciate it. Obviously, the majority of our fans are New Orleans Saints fans, but there's a lot of crossover. NFC South follows NFC South pretty much all year long. Tell our fans how they can follow you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, long-winded. None of my answers were probably short, but at least I feel like I'm giving you solid information. At least I hope, especially if you're not, following the Buccaneers as closely. And again, the Saints-Bucs rivalry, don't call it whatever you want to. For me, I'm all, like I always say when I'm on these podcasts, I'm a football fan first. If I'm from New England, so my team is the Patriots. I cover the Bucs, but if my team were to disappear off the planet of the earth, I would still be a football fan, whether I picked a new team or I just follow the sport. And I would want to know more about football as a whole. So if you're kind of like me, you love football, you just want to know more, keep up to date with teams around the league, and the Bucs being one of them, especially because they're in the division. Give me a follow on Twitter at JCL and NFL. I'm kind of your one-stop shop for everything. All of my content, first off, will be there. at Bucs Gameday on Twitter, Sports Illustrated. You'll find all my content on there. Anything from the Buccaneers posting, from players, from stats, analytics. It's your one-stop shop. You really don't need to follow anybody else in the Tampa Bay area to know everything you need to know about the Buccaneers. So definitely check that out. I've got a new podcast out. I just had one of your fellow Saints guys on there, David Grubbs from Bucs and Saints.
Nice.
He came on. So that's going to be dropping tomorrow. It's called Pirate Parlay, part of the Sick Podcast Network. A really great thing, inspiring story that how they started up. So if you want to follow me there, it's on YouTube, like and subscribe. It's on my Twitter page. So just jump over there and give me a follow if you want. Other than that, I had a blast chopping up with you guys. I could talk football for hours. So no worries about keeping me longer than what we thought about going. But we've got another game coming up later this season.
Yeah. So
if you guys want me back on, I'd be more than happy to jump on and chop it up with you again.
Oh, you better believe it. Let's book it a date, my friend. We're talking rematch already, folks. Does that mean you're waving the towel, this white flag this Sunday already?
There's no towel waving. I think the Buccaneers take this one. It's one of those things. Like I said, my early season predictions, I had this as a loss. But with everything that's transpired, I think the Bucs take this. Close game. I'm not quite at my score prediction yet. It will be out tomorrow at some point. So if you want to know what I'm thinking, little teaser, go to Bucs Gameday Sports Illustrated, and you'll find out what my score prediction will be.
Fair enough. Appreciate your time, my friend. We will speak soon.
Awesome. Talk to you guys later.
Thanks, JC. Oh, hey, one more thing, if you got a second. Just because I see it in the background, you said you're from New England. I see the Jason Tatum autographed basketball. Yes, guys, that's how good I am. I can see an autograph. I know exactly who it is.
Very nice.
With the Damian Lillard trade, are you still confident that the Celtics are the team to beat in the East?
Yeah, absolutely. Dame's good, and pairing him with Giannis and Middleton is going to be a good. But they've sacrificed a little bit of their bench in the meantime doing it. I still think all roads lead through Boston. Made it a little bit tougher there. Philadelphia don't know what they're doing. Miami's always going to be a tough out, as we know from last year. But I think a lot of people are looking at the Dame move and forgetting the Celtics went and got Kristaps Porzingis still, and he's played the best basketball of his career last year. Down in Washington. So pairing him with the Jays is a formidable big three with plenty of depth still on that team. I like their chances.
Awesome.
Yeah, I do too. I'm a Charlotte fan, so I have nothing to look forward to this year. So wishing the best for you guys.
Or
hey, listen, we got LaMelo Ball. We got hope at some point in our lives, but nonetheless, I had to get that question in just because I saw the Jason.
So bad Jordan sold it. So I don't
listen, I've been begging for him to sell this team for 8 or not, however long I've had season tickets, almost a decade. So I'm glad it's finally over.
Funny. Awesome.
But we appreciate it. Like you said, guys, you see his Twitter. It's right up there on the screen. Go ahead and give him a follow. We'll be chatting throughout the week. I'm sure we'll have some banter on Twitter throughout the rest of the week. So we'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Awesome. Talk to you guys later.
Peace. Thanks. All right, guys. JC Allen, you can find him Bucs Gameday on Sports Illustrated. That was a lot of good information, Bob, about a team that, like I said, a lot of people did not expect to get off to the start that they did at 2-1. And hey, I mean, we got 3 teams in the division, right? All at 2-1. Who would have thought? Who would have thought to start the year? Let's talk about a little bit, and going off what he said, I think I think we're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow on the PSF app, previewing the game a little bit further. But I want to hone in on what he was talking about with those injury concerns defensively. Vita Vea, that's a big one if he misses the game or even if he's on a pitch count. It's also a big one that you might be without 2 of your top defensive backs against these New Orleans Saints receivers. So I want to ask you this, Bob. With some of those potential Tampa Bay Buccaneers players missing the game, you still have to worry about that gruesome pass rush that the Buccaneers have. how can the Saints schematically find an advantage if some of those guys were to miss the game, whether it's Jameis Winston or Derek Carr under center?
You got it when you throw the ball. If you're the New Orleans Saints, when you throw the ball, you have to get the ball out of your hands quick. If it's me, especially with if the Buccaneers are going to be banged up at cornerback, already that Olave, Mike Thomas, and Rashid Shaheed are going to present matchup problems against any secondary they play, let alone one that's going to be banged up. So you need to get the ball into their hands. It's okay to do so quickly. You don't have to let deep balls develop down the field. You just, it's football 101. You let your best players touch the football as much as possible. I got to say, I thought Trevor Penning played his best football game of the season last week against Green Bay. The rest of the offensive line, especially Ryan Ramczyk, was just beyond abysmal. I've used abysmal, putrid, pathetic, because I can't find the proper term, to describe their play through my eyes. But against Shaq Barrett, against Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, you got to help your tackles outside. You may have to leave a Juwan Johnson in, for an extra blocker. You may have to go 2 tight ends, and have Jimmy Graham or Foster Moreau on the other side to give outside edge help. We saw them bring in Landon Young a couple of times on Ryan Ramczyk's side, and that did no good. Young was just as much of a human turnstile as Ram and the rest of them. So what you want to do, you want to try to push those edge guys outside your pocket. And then, if you have the extra help outside to do that, then you can leave your bodies inside to set up hopefully some sort of interior pass pocket, which is going to be a lot easier to do if Vita Vea is not able to play, especially if Vea and Kalijah Cansey can't go. But if you do that, that opens up the throwing lanes for Winston or Carr, to hit those quick slants and to hit those quick out patterns, sideline patterns. Get the ball out of your hands quick. Take the 6, 8, 10-yard gain per play, and just let your playmakers do the work. I would use some screens to Alvin Kamara. We've not seen a lot of screens to the running back so far this year, but we haven't had Kamara in the lineup yet this year either. You use that athleticism, on the edge. Test the sideline to sideline pursuit of Levante David and Devin White. We know they're athletes. They've been able to contain Kamara in the past, but at least get them outside of that tackle box so that way you don't have to be as concerned with them blitzing inside and getting in Jameis's face, forcing a bad throw, or forcing a crucial sack. So yeah, that's just it. I mean, you got to operate on a quick rhythm, and you got to be in Jameis Winston's head all week. Get the ball out of your hands quick. 2 to 3 seconds max. That ball's got to come out, period.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is not one of those games where you try to show off Jameis Winston's arm. It's just not, especially because of how putrid the offensive line has been. I thought JC brought up a good point with the lack of passes to Kamara, the lack of receptions he's got over the last few years, and even dating back to the times we were both writing, for Sports Illustrated. I remember lots of articles where we both brought up the fact that, is this a Jameis problem where Jameis is just not throwing to running backs? I mean, historically, Jameis hasn't been a guy that's hit running backs a whole lot. Was it a Pete Carmichael problem? Was it Alvin Kamara problem? And there was a little bit of conversation, within our own articles, and then just us being together on shows like this and saying, well, maybe it's a mix of all three. I'm not confident that Kamara is going to get the ball out in space. I'm not confident in this game that Carmichael is going to draw up screens, swing passes, things like that for Kamara, and be creative in getting him into the offense, where I think this is a game, especially since he hasn't played this year, it would be smart to line him up different places, get him the football, get him involved. Unfortunately, I just don't have the confidence that that's actually going to happen. I'm with JC. I think this is going to be a low-scoring football game. mostly because the Saints haven't proven to me otherwise that they can score points. And the Saints defense has been extremely, extremely good. I think they're going to certainly test Baker Mayfield, and I won't say force a ton of turnovers by any means, but I think they're going to definitely get some opportunities, to jump some routes or get in Baker's face. So with that, I want to move into dot or drop, and we'll continue our, coverage on the PSF app, which means you guys have to hang out with us more this week and every week throughout the entire season. So if you're not on PSF yet, please go download the PSF app. Follow Bob and I will give you some details on how to do that and join the Saints chat. But Bob, dot or drop? Jameis Winston throws multiple touchdowns against the Bucs if he starts.
Dot. Yeah, dot. And yeah, listen, I know you have to take the good with the bad when you have a Jameis Winston as your quarterback. But if you can control Jameis's emotions and keep him from going all squirrely up here, which has always been a Jameis Winston problem. We know he has the arm talent. And we know that the Saints have the receiving talent. I already liked the Saints wide receiving matchup against the Bucs secondary before JC said what he said about the injuries. I knew about Davis. I had no idea about Jamal Dean. I think that this is a game where Michael Thomas has a big showing, and Mike has played very well this year. But I think Tampa Bay is going to be maybe overly wary about Chris Olave, who's still going to get his touches and opportunities, and they're going to want to guard against the big play to Rashid Shaheed. Mike Thomas has played very, very well against the Buccaneers, throughout his career before the rash of injuries, and Jameis has the gun to get the ball to Mike in stride in the middle of the field where he can run a little bit. So yeah, I could see Jameis throwing for. I'm going to predict it now. Jameis is going to throw 2 to 3 touchdowns this game against Tampa Bay.
All right, throw it right back at me, my friend.
Dot or drop. We're going the other quarterback. The New Orleans Saints are going to cause 3 turnovers. At least 3 turnovers from Baker Mayfield on Sunday.
Drop. I think that's overly optimistic. This has been a really good Saints defense. It really has. I do think it's a little over optimistic.
3's a lot, I grant you.
Yeah, Baker's had his issues interception wise, but I do go back to that 2020 season. He's in an offense that's very similar. He's not having to play superhero. I think people forget how good Baker and the Browns were that year. And I think Baker gets really disrespected because that year gets really easily forgotten.
We all want to forget 2020, let's face it.
I mean, yes, but at the same time, it's like Baker did things that no Browns quarterback had done.
Not since Bernie Kosar.
I was going to say, you take that whole jersey of all those starting quarterbacks, and Baker did something that none of them did. Again, I was higher on Baker through the process. I really liked Baker Mayfield. The rumors with Sean Payton slowly falling in love with Baker Mayfield. I was like, both those dudes have attitudes and are petty. I think it would be a match made in heaven. Unfortunately, we never got to see it. I just don't see 3. I see 1. Maybe 2, like 1 interception, maybe they force a fumble, but I don't see 3. I just don't. My last dot or drop to you. Alvin Kamara's been sitting on a Saints record for a little bit. He's tied with Marcus Colston with 72 touchdowns. Does Alvin Kamara in his first game back this season finally get sole possession of that New Orleans Saints record for career touchdowns?
I'm going to go dot again. And if you look at Alvin Kamara's career numbers against the Buccaneers, you take the whole thing in, it looks like he's had a nice career, and he has scored 11 total touchdowns in 12 games against them. But I think that this is a game where Pete Carmichael forces himself to use Kamara more as a receiver, and I think that Yeah. Well, here's a scare. Yeah. In the last 5 games against Tampa Bay, where Alvin Kamara has played against Tampa Bay, he has only 15 receptions for 68 yards total. Right. I think I think Pete Carmichael uses Kamara, and I think one of Jameis Winston's multiple touchdowns go to Alvin, and he takes over sole possession, of the career touchdown lead, from the all-time great Marcus Colston. So I'm going to go Dot.
It's been a long time coming. I hope so.
Yeah.
I also realize it's a monkey off your back at that point too.
Yeah.
That you don't have to think about it anymore, and you can just play. All right, my friend, throw me one last one, and we'll get off here for the evening.
Oh my gosh. Dot or drop? Mike Evans versus Marshawn Lattimore. Mike Evans again has 3 or less receptions against Lattimore in that Saints secondary.
I'm going to answer this uniquely. All right. I think Lattimore versus Evans, first off, is one of the more underrated rivalries by national media people. I mean, people in the division know all about it. I think Evans gets more than 3 catches. I don't think he gets more than 3 catches when Lattimore is the primary cover man.
Fair.
Right? And I think a lot of that has to do with how much Evans has been lining up in the slot this year.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get opportunities, whether it's against Alontae Taylor, whether it's against a safety for New Orleans, whether it's Howden, whether it's the Honey Badger. He's going to get opportunities, and there's going to be things drawn up to get Mike Evans the football. But when Lattimore's in coverage, I mean, shoot, Kamara joked about it the other day when he was being asked about it, and he said, Marshawn's going to be ready. Like, they all know in that locker room what's coming, and so does Mike Evans. But yeah, I think Evans ends up having like a 5 or 6 reception day, but he might only get one of those grabs when Lattimore's the primary, man in coverage. So loaded answer. I don't know if that really answered what you were looking for, but no, he will not have 3 or more against Lattimore. Yes, he will have more than 3 in the game. I don't know if it's
judges accept that. It is a cop-out, but judges accept that answer.
Okay, good. I did good today. I learned something in whatever law classes I took in college. That's bad. I don't even remember what they were called. I just remember they were law classes. Nonetheless, really fun show today. Love having guests on to talk about the opposing team because it does give us, added information, and it gives you guys added information about what to expect week to week. Bob, where can everybody follow you on the World Wide Web? PSF, you're writing articles, you're doing podcasts, you're a busy man in the New Orleans Saints multiverse. Where can people follow you there?
I like that. I do. Folks, thank you for tuning in with us on a special Thursday night. Sorry about the scheduling conflict last night.
That's my fault.
I hope, but I figured I'd let people make their own conclusions. Nothing's ever my fault.
Never.
I missed our post-game show. It wasn't my fault. It was the Green Bay Packers' fault and the fault of the New Orleans Saints. So, again, never my fault.
I heard technical difficulties.
They were definitely technical, and they were definitely difficulties. You can follow me, folks. Bob Rose, ROSE on Facebook. I'm at Bobby R2613 on Twitter. Please follow our Facebook page, Bayou Blitz, and our Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. We are heading in the direction where we are going to only be streaming through there and PSF. That's a long time coming, and we'll keep you guys abreast of what's going on. But you're going to have to be members. Not only follow Brendan and I personally, but be members of those Bayou Blitz pages on Twitter and Facebook. For some of the exclusive offers that we'll have going forward. Speaking of PSF, y'all make sure you download that PSF app. We got a lot of exciting things coming. We're still getting some technical glitches worked out, but we're headed in the right direction. Brendan and I are going to give you a Friday night show on PSF, a New Orleans Saints pregame show and a New Orleans Saints postgame show for every Sunday contest. All of them are put through PSF, which, by the way, is free to download. And once you do, you got to beef up our followers a little bit. We're looking kind of pathetic against our compatriots and our competitors. I'm very simple to find on PSF. I am Bob Rose, no spaces. So I even eliminated one character for you to find me.
And Bob doing the good work, making sure it's not difficult to find him, given he's not hard to find anyway. For myself, you can follow me at BT Boylan. That's across just about every platform you can think of. We're really excited about what's going on at PSF. Some glitches, app updates, things we're trying to figure out. It's a new software for us.
Yeah.
It's a lot different than what we're using here. To go live on Wednesdays. So we're still working out some things. Hopefully you bear with us while we work out some things. But we're really excited to be on there, three times a week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Friday and twice on Sunday. So we're really excited about what's going on over there. Sean Salisbury, the president, Mitch and Justin, those guys have a great vision for what PSF could be and just creating a new way to connect with fans on game day. So we're really excited about what they're doing there. Happy to be a part of it. Hope you guys will be as well. Well, as Bob and I said, we will be giving you guys a more in-depth look at Week 4 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over on PSF. Like Bob said, it's free to download. Just find it on the App Store, Google Play. It's a PSF app. Once you create your username, all you got to do is go to the Saints chat, join the Saints chat, and then you can hit a great button where you just hit people and the hosts pop up. And Bob and I are the hosts. We're right up top. You don't even have to look for us. It's a couple buttons. That's it. And then you can set your notifications on for any time we schedule a stream. Like we said, it's going to be Fridays and game days. We can't just limit it to Sundays because football's played on other days. But Fridays and game days will be going live. So we look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. I haven't really talked to Bob about a time, but I'm thinking like 6 o'clock. Bob, does that sound good?
6 Eastern?
6 Eastern.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 Eastern, 5 Central. So as soon as you guys are getting off work, just plug it in your Apple CarPlay and listen.
There you go.
Central time-wise. But we are excited to see you guys then. Until then, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you guys on PSF tomorrow. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you then.